crime in America. Donald Trump, a week or two ago in Las Vegas, in a rally that he held there, he said, he was speaking about Washington, D.C. It's out of control, the crime. And he says, this is a verbatim quote, "We're going to federalize it. We're going to have the toughest law enforcement in the country. We're not going to have any more crime. It's going to look beautiful." Which was, Mussolini, Hitler's claim, too. No more crime. We're going to get rid of the crime. It's what Duterte said he was going to do in the Philippines. He killed 10,000 drug users, got rid of crime. If that's what you want. But here's the thing. Most Americans think that crime is caused by bad morals or poverty. And in fact, all of the studies, or most of the studies, and there's been a considerable number of them, so there's a substantial body of research here. Most of the studies show that, in fact, what causes crime is inequality. Inequality essentially makes people crazy. And if you think I'm just, blowing smoke here, walk into a kindergarten class with a box of cookies, give one cookie to each kid, and then give 20 cookies to one kid, and watch what happens. I mean, you will figure out very quickly, if that kid tries to hang on to those 20 cookies, that people resent inequality. It makes us mentally ill. It makes societies mentally ill. And America has now become the single most unequal society on earth. We have greater riches at the very top. We've got 3 men who own more wealth than the bottom half of Americans. 150, what would that be? 300 and half of 335, whatever that is. 160 some odd million Americans have less combined wealth, all of them together, than 3 men. You're not seeing this pretty much in any other country in the world. Yes, there are some, pretty massive concentrations of wealth. Russia is right up there, for example, Saudi Arabia, but even they are not hitting the levels of wealth that we have here. I mean, you got people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos who have so much money that it's just, it exceeds anything that we have ever seen in history. More wealth than the pharaohs, more wealth than the kings of ancient Europe. Just mind-boggling levels of wealth. And what that does is it's very corrosive to society. I've worked, and I lay this out in the article about working in Colombia, in the slums there in Bogota, or working in Uganda, or working in South Sudan on the border with Darfur, working in the Philippines with Father Ben Carrion, or in Thailand with the Doing Prateep Foundation. In all of these venues, in all of these places, I was working in slums. I was living in slums. I was interacting with people who lived in slums. And yeah, there was some crime, but nothing like, the entire community basically would react if somebody within the community was committing crimes. Most of the crimes were coming from outside. Most of them had to do with organized crime. But when you look at wealthier societies like the United States, and when you start, and those countries are, unequal, but they're far less unequal than here. And as you start seeing inequality getting worse and worse and worse, the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer, and the middle class largely vanishing. Keep in mind, 66% of us were in the middle class in 1980. It's 43% of us now. Reaganomics, neoliberal Reaganomics, 40 years of it. It's Joe Biden is literally the first president since Ronald Reagan, or since Jimmy Carter, before Ronald Reagan, to push back against neoliberalism. And even Jimmy Carter was starting to accept neoliberalism. He deregulated the train industry, deregulated the travel industry, airplanes. He took several steps toward neoliberalism. It was a fad, in the 70s and 80s. And now we're paying the price for it. But what I saw in each one of those countries is that crime was not the problem. Poverty was a problem. But, crime wasn't so much coming out of the poverty. The crime, and again, this is what these studies all show, is that crime comes out of inequality, not poverty. This Oxford Economic Papers, quote, "Using variation within U.S. states over the time, we document a robust association between the distribution of conspicuous consumption and violent crime." Another one from the World Economic Forum. Our key finding is that, in fact, municipalities with lower inequality saw lower rates of crime. In other words, while the overall national data reveals an apparent paradox, broken down by smaller geographic regions, that paradox does not hold. Less economic disparity does lead to less crime. A study of 148,000 people across 142 countries showed, as The Economist magazine wrote, this was the headline to the article about it, quote, the stark relationship between income inequality and crime. Equality Trust in the UK, quote, small permanent decreases in inequality, such as reducing inequality from the level found in Spain to that found in Canada, would reduce homicides by 20% and lead to a 23% long-term reduction in robberies. I mean, study after study after study finds that this is very much the case. Which brings us to the Republican Party. What do they want to do? They want to defund the IRS so the rich tax cheats who are walking away with, an estimated $100 billion a year can cheat even more on their taxes. Ted Cruz calling for the abolition, and John Barrasso calling for the abolition of the IRS. This is crazy. What say you? We'll be right back.